Alright, and welcome to our cubic solving review. Now here, we're going to go ahead and continue to solve this using our reverse PEMDAS method. And let's go ahead and label all the things that we see. Thing number one that I see is I see this negative on the outside of the parentheses. This one's really tricky for students because it's really saying -1 times all the rest of that. There is our multiplication. Okay, I see that we have a parentheses, and I see that we have an exponent. So this one's kind of interesting because we're going to start by getting rid of the multiplication. Well, what's the opposite of multiplying by -1? Would be dividing by -1, and those cancel. Okay, and so now I have h plus 3 cubed is equal to 27 divided by -1, which is -27. Now from here, how in the world am I going to get rid of that exponent? Well, I know that the opposite of a cube is a cube root. So you draw a square root symbol with a cube root on the outside. And we'll do the same thing over here. So remember, the opposite of a square is a square root. The opposite of a square root is a square. The opposite of a cube is a cube root. The opposite of a cube root is a cube. Okay? You're just really either adding or subtracting the word root depending on what you start with. Now from here, those cancel. And we're left over with this. h plus 3 is equal to. However, I would argue that y'all should know how to do this by hand. We've done this quite a few times in the past, but we have the cube root, of -27. Let me go ahead and write that a little bit nicer and a little bit neater. Cube root of -27. Well, if you want to do this by hand, you simply break this down by saying, okay, well, what two things multiply to be -27? I could say -9 times 3, and what two things multiply to be -9? Well, I could say, let's say, you know what, -9 could be -3 and +3. Now notice something here. The signs are all a little bit off. Our signs really didn't work out here. These three numbers need to be the exact same. So since that didn't work out, let's try this a different way. Instead of putting the negative with the 9, let's go ahead and put the +9 and a -3. Wait a second, what two things multiply to be +9? Well, that would be -3 and -3. Okay, and now we have three numbers, they're the exact same, which satisfies a cube root and what we're looking for. Alright, so from here we know that the cube root of -27 is simply -3. So I'll go ahead and write that in white. Now from there, to finish this problem off, to get rid of a +3, we know we can subtract 3 from both sides. We could say this, h is equal to -6. Alright, let's go ahead and work on one more example, a much more difficult one. Okay, here we have 1/5 parentheses x plus 4 cubed minus 3 is equal to 22. Now notice here we're going to be doing our PEMDAS, our solving, in reverse, as we have been. You could even say that this is actually in a vertex form of a cubic function. And let's go ahead and label all of our parts. We see that the 1/5 is right beside the parentheses. There's our multiplication. We see the parentheses themselves, so we have a parentheses. We see the cube, so we have an exponent. And we see the subtraction, so we'll go ahead and label that as such. Now, working from the bottom to the top, I see the first thing is subtraction, and we get rid of subtraction through addition. That goes away. So what do we really have? We have 1/5 parentheses x plus 4 cubed is equal to 22 plus 3, which will be 25. Now from here, working our way up, we want to get rid of our multiplication. Notice that when it's a fraction, we won't use division. We'll simply multiply by the reciprocal. Okay, and those cancel away. We're left with x plus 4 cubed is equal to 25 times 5, which is 100 and, oh, I'm sorry, I did this in red, which is equal to 125. Now from here, moving on, we want to get rid of our exponent, and we should know that the opposite of a cube is in fact a cube root. Okay, so those cancel, and we now have x plus 4 is equal to the cube root of 125. Let's go ahead and do that math off to the side. Personally, if I were you, I would just use my calculator for anything greater than the cube root of 64. But let's just go ahead and do this by hand. I see that this ends in a 5, so I could divide by 5. And 125 divided by 5 is 25. I see that ends in a 5, so I could divide by 5. And 25 divided by 5 is also 5. And we have our three numbers that are the same. The cube root of 125 is in fact 5. Now from there, I have one final step to finish this problem. And I know that to get rid of a plus 4, I will subtract 4. And x is equal to 1. Alright, thank you all so much. I hope this helps, and I'll catch you guys in our next lesson.